Well, good morning. It is Thursday, June the 15th, and welcome back to the shop. It has been a while since I put a video out, but before I get started, I just wanted to thank everybody, all of my subscribers, and again, I appreciate all of them. I'm still getting new subscribers, and I mean, I haven't put much content out lately. Of course, I have, been fixing some of the things on the car after the entire restoration of it. We changed the headrests. I put different gearing in the rear end. We had rattles and squeaks and slipping belts and all those things. And we've taken care of that all in the last 6 months. But there's a topic that came up, and I thought it was quite interesting. A subscriber, Sam, had suggested, how do we immobilize one of these cars? How would we make it so the car can't be stolen? And that's a conversation, obviously, let's face it, these older vehicles are so easy to start. And I'll use that word carefully because, I don't want to talk to anybody about how to do things because it's illegal. But how would you immobilize the car so it can't be stolen? Well, and in my case, what I've done is I've got hood locks, so the locks are down. I've got an alarm system, so you can't really gain access to the car in order to steal it. But if you have a vehicle where you can easily open up the hood and hot wire it, and I'll just use those words, I'm not going to tell you how, basically what ends up happening is that you can start that car. So how would you immobilize that? Well, the easiest way is that you would simply put a toggle switch in the car someplace hidden, that when you toggle that switch, you ground out the coil, right? So you have a wire that is grounded to the chassis, goes through the switch, and the other end of that wire goes to the ground of the coil. That way, when that switch is engaged, the coil is grounded out. No matter how much power you put on the plus side of the coil when you turn the car over, and those points are interrupting the ground, doesn't matter, the coil is grounded, right? So it's not going to create a spark, and therefore it is not going to start the car. So a very simple way to immobilize the car. Now, there's another reason you might want to immobilize the car, and that comes from a conversation we had 3 years ago when I started this project. And that was, I wanted to take this car across Canada, across the US. I wanted to go down Route 66, go through America's most beautiful cities, end up in California, do the Pacific Coast Highway with a convertible Mustang. I mean, that was what we talked about. We wanted to do that. Well, it's a different world out there now, unfortunately. Going through America's cities, sitting in a $50,000 car, a set of lights, might attract the attention of individuals who would like to take your car for a drive without your permission. And in that case, the first thing I'm going to say is, let them take your car. Let the car go. I mean, get out of the vehicle. And I'm hoping, because it's a 5-speed, that today's younger generation can't drive a bloody standard, so I'm hoping that half of my, issues will be gone simply because it's a stick. But the other half of the issue is that if somebody wants your car, let them take it and it's gone. But is there an option to maybe get your car back a little easier? And that got me thinking about this timer device. Now, remember this from an old video. I had this timer. Remember, I unlocked the car with the remote, the interior lights came on and they stayed on for 30 seconds and the headlights came on so I could see myself going to the car at night. And then that was a colossal failure. The lights were coming on during the driving of the car. There must have been some sort of a feedback that was causing the timer to re-engage. I don't know what it was. I gave up. I just ripped the whole thing out. But this timer has an option that might help us in this situation. And let me explain further. But is there another way to use this timer when it comes to immobilizing the car in the event of a carjacking? And the way I was thinking of doing it is that there's many programs in this timer, but the one program that I was looking at using is program number 15. And what program number 15 is that when the timer hits a trigger, now that trigger can be anything that will tell the timer to start going. Once that trigger occurs, it will delay for a certain amount of time, T1. So a timer will start. And at the end of that timer, an action will occur. Now, the action that will occur is I'm going to send 12 volts down this line at the end of the timer. And then that 12 volts is going to stay on for the duration of timer 2. So basically, what is my thought? My thought is that we put the timer in the car, hook it to plus and minus. So, of course, the timer is energized. And the trigger is simply a momentary switch. Now, a momentary switch is very similar to these switches that I used here, but basically a momentary switch is that when you depress it, it closes the circuit, and then when you release it, it opens the circuit. That's called a momentary switch. So if you take and put a momentary switch in the car someplace, upon exiting the vehicle, if you press that momentary switch, you will then send 12 volts into the timer, which will then trigger the timer, and a clock starts, or a delay timer starts. Now let's say we put 60 seconds on that delay timer. That means what's happening is I've left the vehicle, I've pressed that button, and for the next 60 seconds, this timer is simply going to count down. Within that 60 seconds, the other individuals will have entered the vehicle and started to drive away. Now, this is going to be a question I'm going to have later on, is do you think 60 seconds is long enough? I believe so. I mean, seconds will be like minutes at that type of an event. But basically, what will happen is the car will start to drive away. 60 seconds later, the timer is going to do an action. That action is it's going to send 12 volts down the line. That 12 volts is going to energize a relay. Now, the way the relay is working is that when the 12 volts hits the relay is going to close the circuit. That circuit will close. One half of the circuit is grounded. The other half of the circuit goes to the negative side of the coil. So what's going to happen is that 60 seconds after I've pressed that button, this relay is going to close, and I'm going to ground out the coil. Well, we all know what happens when you ground out the coil. The car will stop. And it doesn't matter in this type of a circuit if they turn off and on the ignition, because basically if you turn on and off the ignition, it doesn't matter. This is going to your battery. This is going to ground. Once activated, this timer is shorting out your coil. There's nothing you can do. In my point, my hood is locked. So the idea is they can't even open the hood to do anything. So the car's dead. And that really is my idea behind putting in a immobilizer, but with a delay. So like I said, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. Do we even do something like this, right? And now remember, this is a conversation that started out with Sam and myself, immobilization of the car. And that immobilization was talking about when the car is sitting overnight in a parking lot, and you throw a toggle switch, you ground out the coil, and it'll obviously make it difficult to steal the vehicle because you've interrupted the points, right? Electronic points, mechanical points, I don't care. You've interrupted the coil. That brought us to the next question is well, okay, that's immobilization of the vehicle when it's sitting. What about immobilization of the vehicle when it is running? And that brought us into this whole conversation about carjacking and the idea that the car could be stolen from you while you're in the car, right? Never mind while it's sitting in a parking lot. And that brought us to this. How would you do this? And that's all this really became, was a mental exercise as to how would you do this? Now, the question is do we do this? I mean, do you put yourself at risk? Is there risk? I mean, let's face it. I mean, you get out of the car and you press that button, the car is not going to shut down. It's going to still run. They get in the car and they drive off. 60 seconds. That's a long time for them to be gone. 60 seconds, and no movie reference there, obviously, but they're going to be gone. And you'll go the other way, find a cop, and let them know that there's going to be a dead car someplace now. Does that work? Is that dangerous? I mean, that's really the question. And is this something we would even think of doing? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, mental exercise. Do we put this in the car? And I'll go through this. I'll show you how to do it, and we'll get it, and we'll test it, and we'll do all of that just to see how it works. But I'd love to hear your feedback. Is this something we should even be thinking of? Or do we just let the car go and not even think about trying to get it back? Great topic. Love to hear your thoughts. Well, listen, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. And as I said before, there's always going to be something on this channel that's a little out of the normal. And that's why I make these, because as I said, I never put a video out that somebody's done 55 times. So like I said, that's what the point of today was. So let me know your thoughts, and let's see if we put a carjacking immobilizer in the Mustang. I'll see you then.